Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm about to start. I'm just checking to see that the platforms are working. Oh, right there.
I'm scared of these TNTs. Can you light the TNT islands so they blow
yes.
up?
All right. Yep. Seems to be working. I need you. But just in case. I might be checking around Facebook or Twitch, like if just to see if there's like any problems during the stream, but it shouldn't. Anyways, okay, so hey Scorpion, thank you and welcome. So for you guys who okay, I see the 3 platforms are working now. That's good. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, yeah, I'm Jose, and I've been a streamer for Pixelogic since beginning of last year, but I took a long break, like several months breaks, and I'm coming back today. I think it's like on a Sunday, it's nice to just have a chill stream. I'm just gonna sculpt on this guy, work on him a little bit, maybe add some color, and of course, like, well, I'm from Mexico, so I also do my streams in both English and Spanish. So there might be the case that I need to switch during the stream, but like I don't think that's an issue. It's mostly gonna be in English, but if there's any Spanish-speaking persons watching, just like feel free. I don't really mind. So yeah, welcome. Let's go. I'm a little bit rusty, so I apologize if there's any issues, but everything seems to be working fine right now, so let's hope nothing bad happens during this thing. Okay, so yeah, I was working on this guy before taking the break. I left it on like as is, like this. It's almost finished on the sculpt part. It's mainly just details that I wanted to add. I feel like the head and the front limbs are better, or like more defined than the hind legs. But I also don't want to add too much detail. There's some stuff I need to like maybe just finalize. I'm gonna pose him and do other stuff, but for now I was thinking maybe just add a bit of color. Because I realized that it's really useful to like I've seen other artists do it, and I want to start doing it myself. And I did it on the beta project when I was working for the 2020 beta version. I played around with color way before finishing the sculpt, and I felt that helped me a lot. So I'm gonna try and do the same thing here. And I have my revs here. Thanks, man. Yeah, it kind of looks like an alien. I'm gonna use like real ajolotls for revs. I really like the combination of colors, and there's a particular image. Actually, there's two, but you know what? Yeah, there's two images that I'm gonna try and follow. I was gonna put them on ZBrush, but I think it's too much work. Just bear with me, guys. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is to start with a really light like yellow thing on the whole body. Maybe even more clear. And hold on. All right. So I put the base color in, and then I'm gonna start painting around that. I'm mostly like I want this guy to be super colorful, but not in a way that's like distracting or annoying. And I mostly be using the whole color wheel. There's some really cool blue, greens, and red tones, and purples, and like pinks that I wanted to use in different areas of this character. So it's all gonna be like super gradual. What I like about poly painting, and it's been a long time since I've done poly painting. Like the color stuff I've been doing lately, it's been mostly like textures. For the past couple of years, it's since I poly painted something. So I mean, well, not completely, but mostly. So what I like to do is just start with color spray, because it not only changes the size and the intensity of the sprays, but also like the tint a little bit, and then use the alpha 07. It's like really, it's just dots. It's really simple stuff, and it's really, I find it's so good for organic stuff. We just need to change here to RGB, and I'm gonna decrease the intensity and just color like really freely. I remember I was watching like an interview or something from Guillermo del Toro when Shape of Water just came out, and I remember he said something about like creature design, how it's a rookie mistake to use the sculpt to define color. Like for example, let's say just color, like let's say do would be the equivalent of doing like a mask by cavity or something, and then just using that mask to color. It's useful for certain things, but like the main tones should be independent of the surface detail. He basically said something about how in the real world animals and other creatures, they have patterns of color and then patterns of skin that don't necessarily match, and that stuck with me, so I'm gonna try and do that. I know it's like really subtle for now, but that's exactly what I want. Like I want to be building little by little on top of it. And let's see if I can save these colors. Hey, side effects. What's up? Hola. What's up? Ink by Alex. How would you go about adding buttons to a code? What do you mean exactly by adding buttons to a code? There's like several ways you could do that. Is it for like a character? Because if you just want to get like, let's say for example it's a game character and you want to just build a high-res version, the high poly, you can just use whatever method works. If you're in ZBrush, you can use like nano mesh or insert mesh, create it into an insert mesh, and then just like put them out. Or you can just like model the buttons and place them by hand. That's another thing you can do. If you're working like in Maya or something, you can do that as well. There's really like no specific like rules for that. I want to do actually. I want to save. Let me see. I want to save these colors, but I don't remember how to use this thing. The C color. Sorry about that. I was checking something. I thought there was a way to essentially draw along the edge of the code. There's a there's actually a bunch of scripts you could use for that. Off the top of my head, I don't remember that. What's the name of the one that I use? But you should be able to find something if you look for like geometry paint or something like that. Like lets you load a certain mesh and then just like place it around the other mesh. But I don't know. Are you talking about ZBrush or like another 3D software? I'll need to check because I have that script at work and I don't remember the name like right off the top of my head. It's not for ZBrush, it's for Maya, but if you want to do it in ZBrush, I guess you could create the mesh of the button and then create do an insert mesh and then use that to just place the button. Like I'm gonna show it super quick. So I'll just turn on perspective so we see the floor. And let's say I'll go back to this thing. Let's say this is the button. I'm gonna make it a polymesh 2D, but let's say this is the geometry of the button we want. So I'm just gonna go to brush and I'm gonna create an insert mesh. It says, would you like to append the active mesh to an existing brush or create a new brush? I'm just gonna click on new brush, and so it creates the brush with a geometry in it, and you can create like multiple different meshes inside the same insert mesh and just select it here. And so with my newly created brush, by the way, if you want to have this thing at all times, you need to save it, and if you want it to appear here, you need to save it in the startup folder. But for now, just I'm just gonna let's say I want to add buttons to this guy. So with this same mesh, oh yeah, super quick. I'm just gonna delete the subd levels. I'll just be coming back later. Oh, is the audio low? Is it the microphone or the music or both? Is it better this way. Thanks a lot, by the way, because I was kind of afraid something bad would happen with the audio. Can you hear me better? Okay, perfect. Thanks, man. All right, so where was I? Yeah, so when you have the brush, you can just place it. Hold on. What's it placing like that? It's supposed to be like if you create it. How was it? I think it was like you need to place it like this. So I'm just gonna rotate it 90 degrees, like facing the camera, facing the front. I mean, sorry. It's been a while since I did this, so I just need to remember. But I think it was like you need to create the geometry like this and then create the brush. Just gonna create a new one. And so when you place it, okay. Misclick there. Yeah, when you place it, you can control the size. And then if you also do like the reverse, like let's say, first you drag and then you drag again to the other side, you can change as well the shape. I mean, I don't think that's what you want, but with this you can just place buttons super quick. Just have the geo ready for when you load it into ZBrush, like the button geometry you're gonna use for the trench coat, and then just create a insert mesh and just place it around like this. It's super simple. Just remember, it's gonna like it's not creating a new subtool. It's using the same one, so it's creating polygroups. Just remember to like separate them later, and you can select them and just delete the mask. You can select all the new buttons. Okay, this is tricky because since I erased the subdivisions, it's a bit harder to navigate. But like, just select the buttons and then split hidden or split groups or whatever, and then you're all set. You have your buttons on the trench coat as a new subtool. Cool, nice. Hold on, I have the. I don't know if the Facebook chat is working. Let me check super quick. All right, so I was painting this guy. I was doing like the pink tones, and yeah, just nothing super fancy. Just painting this guy. And I'm not really gonna stress that much about like I have a color palette, but I'm just gonna wing it really. Maybe later I can just change the tones a little bit with a new color editor. That's super useful. Okay, so for these ones, I'm just gonna subdivide a couple times more so I have a bit more resolution. You're welcome, dude. Glad it helps. So for now, it's mostly the same tone here, but I'll start changing that soon. And this slow layering of tones will like it will eventually start looking super natural and like better and better the more colors I add, the more tones I overlay. Like in a way, I think poly painting in ZBrush is a lot like the traditional stuff, because there's really not like you can use layers, but there's really not like a layer system similar to how other software do it, so it gets a bit tricky, but I'm just gonna... Oh yeah, I forgot, since I have the intensity, I need to do the color fill object several times. Just for the eyes. It looks really bright right now, but it's slowly gonna start changing. I really like this color palette that these animals have. It's a really interesting color palette, I have to say. For this part, I just turn off symmetry, because it's not, maybe not super noticeable, but if you're painting, let's say I'm just gonna show, if you're painting something like here, for example, it's fine, like, and even here, it's fine, but if you start painting like right in the middle with symmetry on, you can actually see both sides. You can see like the symmetry working on. And so for when I'm doing stuff in the middle, I like to turn symmetry off, and then just the center do it without symmetry. I think it works better that way. And this is just gonna be like a first color pass because I'm still gonna keep sculpting stuff. But I just wanna like have a general guide of how things are looking. The tones that I'm gonna be using, etc, etc. Oops. So, okay, here I forgot to turn on symmetry. Just gonna go back a little bit, no big deal. I didn't really lose anything. ¿Qué onda, Mao? ¿Cómo que no me escuchas? Pero puedes comentar, entonces no entiendo, ¿lo estás viendo en Face? Porque el video me parece que sí está, entonces no sé qué show. Pero gracias por pasar a saludarme. Y sí, seguro cuando la próxima vez que vamos te debo el putín. Pero no de esos, de los otros. I like how it looks so far. I need to like think what to do with the hands and feet because my reference, like the actual animal, has such tiny limbs. Sorry, that there's not really a guide, any info on how to get there, so just swing it a little bit, I guess. I also want to create some patterns. That I'm probably gonna do it with masks later. ¿Qué onda, Daniel? Ah, perfecto. Muchas gracias. Bienvenido. So, according to my ref, okay, actually I'm gonna try and put both the refs that I'm using here on screen on ZBrush so you guys can see what I'm doing. You know what? Like, 'cause I have the images here on PureRef, but I can just take a screenshot. I think that's easier. Yeah, it was much faster. Section texture. All right. So I'm gonna put them here. This is the okay. Originally, this is the color palette I want to use, but it might change. So who knows? Like I'm just gonna follow this and see where it leads to, and just have to turn on the samples. Spotlight projection, so I can actually color stuff. I'm ditching my old interface, the one that I was using for 2019, and I'm building a new one. That's why I'm working right now on the default one. I just kept the colors, but I'm still building the new interface. So that's why I'm going to the menus and things like that, because I don't know, the old interface wasn't really working anymore, and there was a lot of stuff that I didn't even use, and so I took it out, and then was really empty, and then started adding more stuff. But so until I feel comfortable working on that, I'm just gonna stick to the main one. It's fine. I don't really mind. I'm gonna add some darker tones around here. Oh wow, it went super great. I don't know what happened. And you can slowly start to see that the colors eventually start blending together and give us really interesting, really cool tones. So this is what I was looking for. And I also don't want to spend too much time on this, but maybe I need to. I just a quick guide for the character. And actually, I want to paint most of the limbs blue, and then go from the more bluish tones to the more pinkish ones in the body. Then need some green ones here as well. It looks like shit right now, but it's because I just started. I just need to be patient and keep building. It's the same thing as with sculpting. When you first start, nothing looks right until you suddenly eventually starts getting the main shapes, and then from that the secondary ones, and pretty soon you have a really cool thing. I also want to use the yellow ones. I want to build that. And also another thing I I find useful is start with lighter and less saturated stuff, and then go darker and more saturated as you go. It's easier that way, I think. I mean, you can still paint over stuff. That's no problem really. It's just if you treat this thing like it's a real thing, like it's an actual living animal, I guess you can sort of see the approach, like from building the base layers of color and then go stronger and stronger eventually. So adding some pink tones here as well. And pretty soon you start to see the, I hope, where I'm going with this. Thanks, Phil. It looks really bland for now, because let's face it, like these guys don't really have a lot of information on the surface. They're amphibians, and so like their skin is pretty transparent and translucent and like soft. I imagine this guy to be like a sort of god of the, like, or like, let's imagine like these guys are always like super mysterious creatures. They're very rare, and then they look like they're smiling all the time, and then they can regrow limbs. And so I was thinking, like, what if there's a being like a superior axolotl, like living among them or whatever? So I don't like, could be an alien, it could be like the sort of like matriarch of the species, or who knows. So it's gonna need to look better than a regular creature. I mean, it has more details on the skin. It needs to look more impressive. It needs to be like grander, I think. I don't know how to explain it. And so right now I'm just building the base, and I'm gonna start adding more and more details. Not only on the sculpt, like for right now, for example, I'm just gonna switch to sculpt real quick to see some things. And I want to be careful when I press shift to use the sum, the smooth, sorry. You can see it has RGB and CAD turned on together. So I need to be careful not to blend in the colors, because if I use the like smooth here, I'm also smoothing the colors, and I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is just turn off RGB and then just leave the smooth for the shapes. Correct what I was doing here. And also, like, if you see, it's still pretty low res in some areas, so it's still gonna increase, that's for sure. One more subdivision level, because the main one is 12 million. I guess I could try and do a remesh so that I could reach 25 million, but that seemed unnecessary. I think I can do it with 12. But we'll see. I need to just reproject stuff. I think I can do it like that. Phil, well, I don't know yet if it's gonna be like a sort of chameleon effect. Maybe maybe not like a chameleon pattern, and I don't want this guy to have scales in the skin, but I do want to have color patterns and certain details, like here, for example. I might put some like lights in it along the body, like make it look like they're under the skin. Maybe paint the body and then have those glow. I don't know yet. Like part of the fun is to discover all of that while you're working. The the piece sort of tells you what it needs. And I'm also gonna post it here on ZBrush. I'm not gonna rig it. It has topology. You can see it here. But I did a super quick C remesh. By the way, I love retopologizing stuff by hand. It's just that I didn't want to lose a lot of time with this character. It's not gonna be for production. But on other production stuff that I've done, I love just retopoing stuff by hand. I think it's really like therapeutic and calming, and I know a lot of people hate it, but I really like it. I could do retopo and UVs all day, and I don't mind. I really like it. You can actually pose in ZBrush without losing detail. I'll just show you in a bit. Let me just read the chat. Yeah, I mean, that's if you're doing it for production. The thing is, okay, I'm gonna try to explain some of the big differences. Since I do work in production, it's my day job, and I used to be in surfacing first. I was like doing textures and shading, and now I'm doing oh shit, sorry. And now I'm in modeling. I'm just modeling and sculpting. So I know a little bit about how to work assets on these parts of the pipeline. For production, you really have to consider stuff like you really have to treat the asset thinking that it's going to be viewed from multiple angles throughout the whole thing, the whole cinematic or movie or whatever. And so you really need to pay attention to details, but also need to pay attention to functionality. That's super important. I am pretty sure that if I was like, let's say for example that there's a new Pacific Rim again with Guillermo del Toro, like a real one, not the one that just, you know what I mean. And then let's say he says, okay, Jose, you have to design this new kaiju, and you need to make it so and so. And he gives me the instructions for basically this creature. I'm pretty sure that stuff like this, what I just sculpted in the arm, can work. But the topology will need to be really efficient. Like maybe for example, I won't be able to catch these details on the topology because sometimes for the main wrinkles, you want them in the topology to not be like you don't want to be using displacement maps or normal maps as much, especially since like displacement really is render heavy. So if you can have the detail directly on the mesh, you should do it. But like stuff like this gets really complicated, and then you have to see if this thing actually is functional. Like it looks like it's functional, but you need to see an animator moving it, a rigger trying to rig it. So there's many things here that might not actually work at all. The mouth, for example, is not open. It's just a sculpt. It's just sculpted in. Like it's one surface. So stuff like that you really need to take into account. And for this thing, since I'm just gonna do an image, I don't really see the point. Go with the simpler stuff. I want to pose it. I want to frame it. and I want to do like a nice render of it, and that's it. And so when you're doing stuff like that, ZBrush is really useful. You don't really need to worry about rigging or skinning or things like that. And actually, I think you get a bit more control inside of ZBrush. Yes, yeah, you're right. I just hadn't seen the chat, but that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm just gonna show it super quick. I have a bunch of subtools right now. I think I have what 7 subtools, and like for example the webbing on the hands, it's just a separate subtool, and the eyes, and then the horns or like branchia or whatever this thing are. To pose it without losing the position of the subtools, there's the Transpose Master. It's a really cool plugin that comes with ZBrush. And so what you do, it's a script now. It's the Transpose Master. It's in C plugin, and what you do is basically just click T-pose mesh, and that will look at all the subtools in your mesh, combine them into a proxy. So I get a new tool here that's called T-pose 1, and then the name axolotl. It removes the color and everything. That's why it looks pink, because that's the one I had. And if you check the polygroups, whatever was like anything that was a subtool now becomes a polygroup. And I just have one subtool. I don't have anything else. It's just a proxy that's gonna allow me to pose this thing. And so let's say I want to move the left arm, and that's here I start like using turning off symmetry. So you would paint a mask covering the areas, or like the parts, the different pieces of your model that you want to move around. And it depends how we might have to like repaint the mask, but it's always nice to like try first and then see if it works or not. So for this thing, just create a mask and then position the pivot in a way that makes sense. Pretty much where the anatomy of the actual thing is. And then you can move it around. And if you see it starts moving with like the other subtool, I don't need to reposition everything again. I'm gonna do the same thing with the head. So I just mask the horns and the eyes. And then for this subtool, I'm actually gonna use symmetry. Mask the area of the head a little bit. Okay, and then just be careful. Remember that even though you have different pieces, this is a whole, like a full living creature, so you need to treat it as such. And then for the neck, for example, here I did a mistake with the masking, but then you can move it. So you see that's like a turn on symmetry. And I need to be careful because there was a mistake with the masking, but that's pretty much it. After you're done posing it, you go back to Transpose Master and you click T-pose sub T. And so everything goes back, like it takes whatever information you gave the proxy mesh and then translates it back into your main mesh. And if you see, like it moved the head, it moved the eyes, and it moved the arm, and I didn't lose anything, any details. I did get this error though, and that's like, this is normal. There's several ways to correct that. The first way is like to have if the more you pay attention to your base mesh, the more control you're gonna have while masking. So you can avoid these things with just like painting better masks. But the other one, and the thing that everybody keeps doing in the end, is just like correcting. So go back and and correct stuff by hand. It's tedious, but it's really not a big deal when you look at it, and then just depending on how much it screwed up, it's how much you need to like fix it. But something like this, like super quick, and it's not as noticeable anymore. Maybe you can like resculpt a little bit. And that's it. It's really simple. I mean, it's really simple for this case. The more accessories you have, the more subtools you have, the more like clothing, armor, whatever, it starts to get a bit tricky. And also like if you combine, because this guy is like organic, but if you have hard surface. Hey Vishar, how's it going, man? Nice to see you, man. Okay, so I'm going back on all of this. It was just to show you, and it's also a good exercise because if you remember, like we post in this thing, it creates a new tool and it's gonna stay right there until you close ZBrush and open it again. This disappears. It's like it's storing that every time you post something, and so just be careful of every time you're posting. Go back and go back to your original mesh, because there's been times where I forgot, especially since when like for example, let's say I'm working on Dynamation and I don't have like subdivision levels, and but I want to post stuff around that has like multiple subtools. I sometimes forget to finalize the posing, and I start working on this, to just be careful with that. And also after you translated all like the pose back into the character, you see now that it posts every subtool separately. So we have the body, and if I hit Ctrl C, I'm gonna start undoing whatever fixes I did here, and then hit Ctrl C again, and then if you see, it reverted the posing, but just on the body. So if you want to revert the posing, you need to do it in all of the subtools that were moved. It's a bit tedious, but this is only if you like made a mistake, or like, I mean, the recommended approach would be like to save it and then experiment in another version, because if you screw up, then it's sometimes really hard to go back. I would always advise to like save before doing anything drastic like this. And so with this, I can just go high on all the subtools. Just C-script, no, C-plugin, subtools, and then high-res visible. And then it takes everything back into the high-res. It's just that in the body, we were not working on subdiv C, we were working on subdiv 5. I'm gonna go down 1, so it's easier to manipulate. Now let me just save and read what you guys have wrote. Cute slowpoke. Got in shape. Yeah, you actually can. The transpose is super useful. And I don't think, like, it depends on what you need, but I use it all the time. I don't just use it for posing at the end. I also use it for moving stuff around while I'm sculpting. Like, let's say the size of the head is too big and I wanted to make it small. I also need to make the eyes smaller, like together with the head, and follow on the same scale. So it's easier to do it with Transpose Master than to do the head first and then the eye second, and then try to match again the position that I had initially. So it becomes like a mess. the transpose is really useful, really useful. I recommend using it. Like, okay, wait, how to save settings in ZBrush? Whatever stuff, like, let's say for example, I'm building my custom UI again from scratch. And this is, if you see, this is like the default UI. It's just that I had like my own colors, but it's the default UI. So let's say to move stuff around, you would go to preferences, config, and then no, wait, custom UI. Wait, where was it? I forgot what this thing is. It's a button. It's called enable customize. Oh, here it is. You click enable customize. Yeah, because like also the colors I chose are pretty poor. Okay. So you click enable customize and then the interface changes. Like it lets you place or move stuff around. Right now I'm not gonna touch what I have right now, but let's say for example I want to put my brushes in here. So go to the brush menu, and it has already, like, for example, the button brush that we created earlier, or like the move standard play build up, whatever. Let's say I want to have the I don't know. Let's say we want to have C modeler here on the interface. So I just selected C modeler to be able to have it here on the brush palette, and then I just Control Alt click and drag the button around, and I just place it here, and that's it. So to finalize that, I just go to preferences, enable customize again to like exit out of that mode. I have my ZModeler button here, and then just to save that and be able to recall every time I open ZBrush, I go to preferences and store config. And if I click this, it's gonna store your like general ZBrush configuration, and that includes the interface. You have two trays on both sides, like on the right side and on the left side, and these trays are really useful to place menus. The way ZBrush works is we have all these menus on top, and they're different from other softwares because we don't have like file, edit, blah blah blah, whatever like traditional software works. This is like in alphabetical order, so it might look weird at first. But everything that exists inside ZBrush is on these menus, and so all these buttons, everything is inside these menus. You can eventually find it. So just like, let's say for example, you to come to open the tool menu and open geometry every time, and so you would like drag this slider somewhere, and then let's say you don't use any of these buttons, you can just like delete them. It's the same thing. Enable customize and then Control Alt click in any of these menus and any of these buttons, sorry, and just drag it to the canvas, and it will delete it. I'm not gonna do that, but that's how it works, and then that's how you start building your own interface. If you already know most of ZBrush, or like if you're familiar with your own workflow, you can do this much faster. But what I recommend if you're just starting is just keep the standard UI for now. Keep it until you feel comfortable knowing where everything is, and then you can start moving it around. Because with every version, I mean, you can still load your old interface, but sometimes they add new stuff, new buttons, new things, and that like might disrupt you. And if you it's really nothing super crazy. Still need to buy a tablet starting ZBrush. Yeah, a 16-inch tablet it's more than enough. But I do recommend a tablet. Like you can do stuff with ZBrush with a mouse, but the sculpting part, nah, it's not gonna be, not even close. Like just get a tablet, even a bamboo tablet, it's fine. The one I use is the one I've always used. It's a Wacom 3 into us. It's really old. I got this when I was like 19, I think. An uncle gave it to me for Christmas. And it's still, like, I just changed the tip. My first tip was almost non-existent, so I just changed the tip on the pen. And it's still working fine. Like, for me, this tablet is really amazing. But just whatever you feel comfortable with, doesn't really matter. Hey Klagan, no worries. No, the legs aren't separate subtools. They're all together. I combined everything into one mesh for the body. In this case, since it's really important that I have, like, since it's a continuous surface, I didn't really want to have separate meshes for that. It's all together. Glad I could help, guys. Okay, so going back to painting this guy for a little bit. And then I want to do some sculpting too. So just for now, like what I said about the symmetry, to not to turn off symmetry while I'm painting in the center. I'm just ignoring that advice because it's the tail and no one's really gonna see that up close. It matters for the face, but that's it. Or like maybe this part of the body. But the back, no one cares. Oh, okay, this is good. Sometimes this type of bugs happen when like you're sculpting or painting, and then ZBrush has this thing where like it uses 100% intensity for some reason, and then you get like weird things like this. If you see, let's go to flat color. Like look at the colors, and this is just using one tone. But since I'm using the stroke called color spray, I'm getting a little bit of variation on the colors. It's not just the one that I picked. So that's the reason I use it. If I just use like the spray one, I get a much more monochromatic effect, like lighter and darker and maybe stronger or fainter dots. But with color spray, let me just go back. With color spray, you get also variation in color, and this is super useful. That's the reason I'm using that instead of just the spray. And for organic creatures, like variation on the skin tones, I think is the most important thing to sell the color, to make it not look like super static or whatever, uniform. And also sometimes like it's, for this thing I'm just gonna turn off the alpha and then just go with a normal brush like this. I just want to get the tone in. We don't really need to like worry too much about going super detailed on the tail right now. Yeah, Klagan, it's I understand. My suggestion would be like to not worry too much about details. Like not ignore them, but details aren't everything, really. It's much more important if you focus on the main shapes, on the silhouette, on proportions and volumes, and to see that everything working fine. And once you have that, you can start adding details little by little. But like the way I think works best is if you go from lower res to high res. So work as much detail as you can on the lowest resolution, which is not like at all a lot what you can do. Like not much detail you can add. Well, that's what I mean. Just gonna turn off dynamic. and after that, like subdivide again, or go up one level and then just detail again, and again and again, and like eventually you go from main shapes into secondary shapes into tertiary shapes into surface detail. Stuff like these muscles here, some of these wrinkles, these are like secondary shapes, and then if you really get close to it, some of these start to transition into like tertiary shapes, and then eventually you can add detail. But you also have to consider the end product. Like, what are you doing this for? Is it for production? Is it a personal piece, like portfolio piece? Is it just a concept art? And so that will give you the info what you need. Just gonna try and add a bit more red tones around here. Hey Dan, unfortunately what you're talking about, the peel UVs, that's the UV editor for ZBrush, and that's not really ready yet. They showed it a long time ago, and I was hoping that it would be ready for this version, but it's not. Like, that's the UV editor, like for unwrapping UVs. What you can do is the morph UV thing. I can show it right now. We just need to create like UVs for this thing, which I don't think it has UVs, but let me do it right quick. Just gonna save. And so I would go to UV map. In fact, if you want to check if something has UVs in ZBrush, you go to texture map, and if the option for create is not highlighted, like I can't click any of these buttons, it's because I can't create a texture from polypaint because I don't have UVs. So I go to UV map, and then morph UVs. I mean that's what I would do, but like I don't have UVs, so I need to create UVs. So C plugin and UV master, and basically it's really simple stuff. I'm just gonna do symmetry and then polygroups, so it can create shells of UVs based on the polygroups that I already have, and then just unwrap. Sets function requires to be lowest subdivision level. That's fine. I go to the lowest subdivision level, click unwrap, and now I have UVs. But how do I see them? Okay, so go back again to level 5, and then go to UV, and then I can click the morph UVs button. And what it would do is just, it's gonna take my mesh and flatten it basically to show where the UVs are. It's still my main mesh. If you see like all the sculpted detail, and it's not completely flat. That's another reason. Like, it's not completely flat because it's still taking into account like the stuff that I sculpted in. But let's say, for example, that I have a pattern or whatever. I just want to paint like a red line across this thing, and I can do it like painting and sculpting at the same time. So I'm just gonna take the standard brush with a super red color and turn on RGB and cyan. And so checking like the intensity a little bit. I'm just gonna do this. So I paint that, and this as well, and this as well. I paint that, and then I click more UVs again, and that's what I have. So this is really useful stuff, but it's not like the peel UVs thing you were talking about. That's still not quite here in this version. Yeah, unless I'm mistaken. But no, it wasn't in the beta. So there's a color editor, but that's like for poly painting stuff. The UV editor is still being worked on, and then this feature, I think it's really useful for not only for painting but for sculpting. There's sometimes tricky areas, and it's useful to just like unfold everything. but that's basically what it does. Main shapes besides silhouette, like the muscles and big wrinkles. No, I mean, main shapes, big wrinkles wouldn't count as main shapes. Big wrinkles would count as secondary shapes, I think. Main shapes, like imagine if you had to use this thing and deconstruct it to the most basic level. So if you take, for example, okay, I'm gonna, how do I do this to show on stream? I'm gonna try and explain it the best I can. Okay, so let's say the arms, for example, here, the thing I just masked, if you have to reduce that to the most fundamental shape, it's basically a cylinder. So you start with a cylinder. The more experience you have sculpting stuff, the easier it is to not skip steps but blend them together. So and different people have different approaches. Some people like to create with primitives. They start with like spheres and cylinders and cubes and build like the main shapes that way, and then merge everything together and then just like start sculpting. Other people like me, I don't really like that. I know it's useful for a lot of people, but I prefer to just start from a sphere. Start from a sphere and start building my shapes. But I still like need to, like, the main shapes would be something that looks recognizable from this distance. That's the main shapes. So like big wrinkles and muscles, you can't really see them from this distance, but you can see the tail, you can see the thighs, the hands, the head, the torso, you can see all that stuff. You can see like the horns. Those are the main shapes. And then you start going closer and you're like, okay, I have the muscle of the shoulder here, I have the biceps here, I have some weird shapes in the chest here, whatever those are. I have like the abdominal muscles, I have stuff like that. And then you go even closer and then, okay, I have wrinkles, I have some like smaller, like not less important, but less important to the shape, muscles, the fingers, like the doesn't work at this distance, doesn't work at this level. It doesn't matter how much effort or work you put into the other steps. You need to always be looking for the main shapes first, and then when those work, keep going on the other stuff. I don't know if that's a bit more helpful. Okay, let me go back and read, because there were some messages. Like if you wanted to create a portfolio of creatures, okay, of course I would recommend to do creatures, but it really depends what you want to do with that portfolio. You want to be a concept artist or you want to be a production artist, because those things are super different, and depending on your answer is like, maybe if you want to be a production artist, you just need one really good piece on your portfolio to get a job. If you want to do concept art, you need several to show that you know anatomy, that you know color, that you know composition, that you know design, so many things. So it really depends. But for creatures, like general tips or advice that apply to every single creature, no matter like if you're like concept artist or production one, is to learn animal anatomy and human anatomy. Because I've seen like at least like 90% of creatures are a combination of those two. They start from some animal stuff and then they also add animal anatomy on top of that, or vice versa. They start from like a human anatomy and then add animal anatomy on that. And also, like if you study comparative anatomy, you start to blend stuff. You start to realize, okay, we have chest muscles, but so do dogs. It's just that their shape is different. Okay, so where are the muscles on the dog? Here. Okay, and then you can start seeing the similarities. Like, where are the shoulders here? where the hips, the neck, etc., etc. So anatomy is like the most important thing for creatures, I would say, like the most important. And then after that, you can start doing wacky stuff like maybe creating creatures with some hard surface stuff or base stuff of trees or rocks or whatever. But like the main thing is anatomy, I would say. Yeah, I agree with the PLUVs thing. I also I got really excited when they showed it. I think it was like a year or so ago, a bit more. And it's a really, I mean, I prefer that they take their time and do it right instead of releasing something that's super buggy and it's gonna just be a pain to use. So it's fine, like we can wait. I use other stuff for UVs anyway, so I don't think it's that bad. I'm just gonna paint some more and then I'll read you guys again because sometimes you get like this idea, okay, I want to fix this, and you want to go and do it before it fades away. Um, the cool thing about using the polygroups is that I can isolate areas that I need, and this is also better for the software. It works faster because it doesn't have to like show everything. So I have. It's also useful to have your own hotkey. So I have my own hotkey for isolate, and I'm working on the body subtool, so I isolate super easy. And then I just selected this specific polygroup on the legs, and that's the way you would do it. I'm trying to blend the colors and to go like slowly but like firmly building on top to keep adding more detail, keep like adding more tones, blending stuff together. Okay, there's a lot of messages, hold on. Thank you, JC. Automatic UVs? Oh no. Okay. The damn, I think there's a misunderstanding because OBJs do carry UVs over. OBJs include mesh information and UV information. So if you have UVs on a mesh and you export to OBJ, it should be okay. I think. It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure. Let me just yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm just gonna do the UVs again since I reverted it. Go to the lowest. Unwrap. This means I have my UVs, and then I'm just gonna go export, turn off groups. because when you're exporting something from ZBrush, and if you have groups on and you have poly groups, it's gonna export like multiple meshes, separate objects of the same thing. It's not gonna be stitched, so just turn off groups here or create a single poly group. But I don't want to lose my poly group, so I just turn off groups and gonna export. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's just that you made me doubt just right now, so I'm just gonna check that super quick. As long as these shapes in forms in the body can be made with enough subdivision levels, of course. Yeah, you can, but like the cool thing is main shapes are easier to work on lower subdivision levels. And then details are easier to work on higher subdivision levels. That's why the approach of starting from low to high, even though it's like super old school, I think it's the best one if you want to have good build shapes, basically. I'm not gonna do UVs for this one. I'm just gonna paint on top. But I'm showing you guys because like what I feel it's cool is sometimes when I'm streaming and people have questions, I try to show, even if I do a bit less work. But like I wanna help if people have questions. So I just imported the the OBJ of the body here in Maya, and I'm checking the UV editor. And yeah, I do have the UVs. So you made me doubt for a second, but OBJs do carry on UV information. So I mean, there's more advanced files, like type of files that can store different types of information or like more precise information. But for to go back between like a main 3D software and ZBrush, OBJs is perfectly fine. You don't need like super wacky and fancy stuff. The ZBrush equivalent of booleans, actually the booleans, it's right here, it's called live boolean. Just gonna show it super quick as well. Okay, so I have my character. Wait. Yeah, I have my character here. I'm just gonna append, let's say, a cylinder here. And I'm just gonna take, okay, I'm gonna take the cylinder and I'm gonna place it on top of everything. I'm gonna create, I'm gonna click live booleans, and right now it's set to addition, so it's showing it exactly like it is. But if I change it to subtraction, wait. Where's the difference? Hold on. I think I need to set the start. I don't really use the booleans in ZBrush. I think you need to set like a start mesh, and then yeah, you need to set a start mesh. In this case, if you click like this little arrow, it shows how you're gonna be affecting the booleans, and then you have the actual mesh that's doing the difference, and then you just move it around. That's why it's called like live. I've seen people do really interesting stuff with this for hard surface. It's just that I don't really use it that much. I didn't use it at work, and on my personal stuff I've been doing more organic sculpting. But sometimes it's useful. You can like do the booleans here. That's with subtraction, and then you can do the difference. It's only going to show the intermediate stuff, if you can see, and it's skipping the color of both meshes, so it's showing where the intersection between the body and the cylinder is. Doesn't, like, the problem is I can isolate it, so otherwise I'm just looking at the cylinder. But if you're curious, just like Google live booleans. There's tons of stuff and tons of videos on YouTube and on the site with much better explanations than this one. I'm just showing it if you're curious, but I don't really use it. Oh yeah, I just I just saw the chat. Didn't see that someone responded. Sorry about that. I'm so not used to like. It's been a while since I streamed, so I'm like out of rhythm a little bit with the chat. Yeah, you're right. Doesn't support vertex color, but it's fine. Like, depends on what you need with OBJ. For example, if you're using Keyshot for rendering, since it has like the connection with ZBrush um, really well implemented, when you export something, it creates like a bump map, like I'm sorry, a bitmap, not a bump map, of the color info, and it sort of like goes to Keyshot with all the vertex color. If you wanna like export this thing into Maya, you need like to create a texture, um, for example. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna continue. Thanks for these questions. It's really nice that I can be able to help. But it's also like sometimes. Okay, what happened here? Okay, I need to be careful. I did something during this whole thing, and I lost the. I think it was when I did the UVs and then exported it or something. I lost like the color a little bit, but it's fine. It's back now. But yeah, for anything, the Ask ZBrush channel is amazing. I don't know if you guys have tried to Google your questions there before, but it's probably like if you have with 3D. When I started learning it, it was like a lot of forums and things like that, and I still check some of those things. And it's really funny when sometimes you have like a question even on like the latest version of the software, and you Google for that, and someone like 5, 6, 7 years ago had the same question on some forum, and there's already the answer there. For like 99% of the stuff you run into, someone already had that problem. So just look around and you'll get the answer. It's really sometimes it's more complicated than others, and sometimes it's really tricky stuff. But the more you work on it, the easier it gets. Really. Okay. I think this is fine for like the first pass. Color maybe just. I'm gonna take away a little bit of the green I had here. But it's fine. What I can do right now is just turn off the poly paint and then go back into sculpting for a little bit, because I really wanna continue detailing and refining a little bit the shapes that I had here already. I think the arms are pretty much done. Well, the arms, but not the hands still need quite a bit of work, actually. No, the ZBrush will. Well, I won't say never, but I don't really think ZBrush will have Arnold anytime soon, because Arnold is a really complicated engine that works with real world scale and the subsurface values, and ZBrush isn't really a 3D software. ZBrush is more like a 2D, 2.5D software. It's like it's projecting the idea of 3D, but it's not really showing 3D. I'm just gonna go back to the lowest subdivision level and separate both the arms and the hands from this piece, so it's easier. I'm just gonna take till here, create a different color, and then I have the hands. And then from this one, I'm gonna do the same with lasso. so it's easier. And right here I'm gonna try and follow the topology a little bit, so the cuts are cleaner. As you can see, it's a spiral. It's not really a closed loop, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. Just changing to have a color that's more easily readable. ZBrush doesn't have keyshot. ZBrush comes with the option to render into keyshot, but you need to purchase keyshot and the keyshot bridge. And then the keyshot you get is keyshot for ZBrush, and the only way to open stuff there is sending it from ZBrush. You cannot like import or open OBJs directly, and there's like some other functionalities that are missing, but it's pretty much the same thing. It's implemented into ZBrush, but it doesn't have keyshot. You have to purchase the license. How would I render the human face to show subsurface? Well, there's several ways. In ZBrush, you mean? I'm really not sure. I know there's like advanced shaders for that, but I don't really use it. There's a subsurface pass you can do on ZBrush. It's here, BPR SSS. You can tweak stuff around. I need to change these colors because I can't read anything. I'm gonna do it for next time. But it's like a fake SSS. It's not really like in ZBrush, since it's not a real 3D software. It's I would say like impossible to calculate accurate as subsurface scatter from ZBrush. You would need to do it in like another software. Yeah, exactly what Aries is saying. It's 3D under the hood. It's not really 3D. Most of the stuff it's showing, it's faking it. So, like if you're concerned about like actual quality and production stuff, pair ZBrush with another 3D software, like 3D Max, Maya, Blender, Houdini. But don't just stay with ZBrush, because ZBrush is not actually accurate. It's used in production. Every studio and every pipeline has it, but like for sculpting, and that's the like we don't really texture in ZBrush, we don't really render in ZBrush, we don't really rig or animate in ZBrush. It's mostly sculpting. Sure, like if you're not working in production, you can texture in ZBrush, you can post, you can render, and you can do like your images all in ZBrush and other like smaller softwares. But for production stuff, ZBrush is mostly used on sculpting, because like it's unmatched on sculpting, but it's really outmatched on other areas. Like there's other software that do better stuff than ZBrush, like texturing. You have like algorithmic stuff, Substance, Mari, and yeah, that's what I mean. So I'm just gonna go and keep sculpting a little bit on this guy. I'm almost there with the sculpt. I just wanna accentuate some of the details. I'm close-ish to the latest subdivision level, so I just wanna like accentuate some more stuff. Okay. Forgot I had the standard brush for on RGB mode. I'm gonna go back to the 25 original. Yeah, Tatafo, you're right. You can do that. I have no idea how to do that. Like when I render in ZBrush, I do really basic stuff. or mostly like going to Keyshot, or like if I'm working something for production, I'll just go to whatever like other render. So I've never really used those features, but yeah, you can sort of like tweak it in the shaders. You're right. Thanks, man. When will ZBrush change the UI? I don't know, but I'm pretty confident that they will never change the UI. So don't get your hopes up. I think the Pixelogic team has a really cool idea with ZBrush. It's just different from other softwares. It's I know it's really hard to use at first. I remember the first time using it, I was like super lost. Nothing was making sense. It was really hard to just like find my way around the program. Even like watching a tutorial and following it, it felt super weird. So I would say the learning curve for ZBrush is pretty steep in the beginning. Like it's one of the hardest programs to learn at first. But if you keep at it, and if you are constant, and once you like surpass that initial slope, it becomes one of the easiest softwares to use, and the interface actually makes sense. You get used to it, sure, but the way they do things, it's really intuitive. The some of the like the main hotkeys they have for selections, for masking, the way to navigate around the interface, how to sculpt and paint and do stuff. You start to understand the philosophy behind the decisions, and it starts making sense. It's so weird, but I swear it makes sense. And so I'm like I've never talked with the Pixelogic team about the UI, but from what I know of them and what they've shown and how they've like approached the I don't know, like the new versions of the software, I'm pretty sure they're never gonna change the interface. Might happen, like I don't know. But don't get your hopes up. I would just like learn it the way it is and customize it for what you need as well. Like that's one of the cool things that you can do with ZBrush. Super customizable. No, I think well, I don't know if I'm following the question correctly. I think what the Tafa was trying to say is when are they gonna change the interface into like a more or less complicated, more standard UI? Is that what you're asking? Like a more yeah, standard would be the word. It's really weird for newbies. I agree. Um, but like at first you start like when you're just learning something, you are battling or like fighting against the software. Like you don't remember the hotkeys, you don't remember the menus, you don't know where everything is, so you have to like fight the software. But once you know the software and then you surpass that, um, you start fighting against whatever idea is in your head. You stop fighting against the software. You can like customize the interface for sure, and like if you look for on Google ZBrush custom UI and go to images, there's amazing UIs from different artists and like really creative ones, and there's some really like super saturated ones as well. Like do whatever works for you, but the main way that ZBrush works, like the main interface, that's not gonna change, I think. YouTube is your best friend, even if you're not a newbie. It's like the best for everything. Whatever thing you look for, it's already there. Arkin, like your question is really vague, and sometimes it's really like your question about like general beginner tips. I would recommend you, like if you're just starting, phrasing this type of questions differently. Because if you just go like let's say to a convention or like learning something, taking a course with some artist, or meeting someone for the first time and ask this question, most people aren't even gonna know how to uh, respond to that. I think one of the best ways you can do as a beginner artist is to start um, asking less questions and doing more work and try stuff. I know it's hard at first because you want every piece in the beginning to be like amazing, but a lot of your first pieces are gonna be like super bad. I know a lot of my pieces in the beginning were horrible. A lot of mistakes and proportions were off. I could have done different with the lighting, and so you start getting better every time. I would say it's better if you ask more specific questions, like I don't know, how can I improve my knowledge of human anatomy, or how can I practice color theory, or stuff like that. But if you just like general tips, everybody's gonna give you different tips. My personal tip would be to like just sculpt as much as you can. Sculpt and sculpt and sculpt and sculpt and make mistakes. And then eventually you'll stop making so many mistakes, and eventually you can sculpt more interesting shapes. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's not like I'm trying to give advice from the like the position where I was in when I was starting. I asked a lot of like questions that now looking back were like pretty dumb. I'm not saying that yours is dumb, it's just that it's really vague, and it's better to have already like an idea in your mind of what you're trying to learn, or I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm sorry. I hope I am. Okay, a lot of comments. I used Blender in the past, and I also hated it, but I haven't tried the new version because mainly I used it for like I had to sculpt in Blender, and so I was always comparing it to how I sculpt in ZBrush, and ZBrush is like 10 million times better than Blender. But I didn't really use Blender fully, and I saw the presentation for the newest version, and it looks really really good. I would recommend that for sure. Blender looks really really good. It's fine. And also, something that I've been doing lately, and it might be also useful. Okay, this is also okay. I need to order my thoughts. One of the reasons why I don't think ZBrush is gonna change the interface is if you look at the way it's built, you can still do stuff that was around for version like 4. Like they don't change that. They don't remove anything. If you look at this, if I go to simple brush, um, yeah, whatever. You see all these 2.5D brushes. I'm pretty sure like no one has used this in a very long time, or like very few people. But they're still there, and that's a good thing because ZBrush doesn't really take stuff out. They just add more stuff in. Sometimes it can get a little bit crowded, I agree, and sometimes you don't find what you're looking for. What happened here? Sometimes it's fun. It's hard to find what you're looking for, and it would be nice if ZBrush like did a redesign. If Pixologic did a redesign of ZBrush, like a new version that's like built from scratch. But then I'm pretty sure we would lose some of the stuff, or some of that stuff would change, or we change the way we'd use it. I don't know. And in a way, it's good that ZBrush stays consistent. And I thought of that because I was thinking of the YouTube channel, the Pixologic YouTube channel. They have so many things in there. They don't ever, I think, delete anything. So like you can watch presentations from the summit and ask ZBrush stuff, or you can watch like past live streams of anyone. I have my own playlist in the channel of my past streams. You can watch that. I was gonna say, some things that I've been doing lately is at work, I'll just like open one of the past ZBrush summits. Like let's pick a conference, and I'll just like one of the talks, put it on the screen, or like sometimes minimize it, just listen to the audio, and work on that. It's really cool because sometimes, even if you know the presentation, if you saw it already, you forget stuff, and then you also get inspired, and you also learn new stuff, like new tricks and tips when the artists are sharing it. So I would also do that. If you're just starting, the main focus would be to understand, like, okay, one of the focuses is to have a job, and that's important. But if you also want to be a good artist, you also need to take care of the fundamentals, and don't forget about those. Don't forget about shape, about silhouette, color, values, anatomy, you know? Around this stuff, making sure it works. You're welcome, dude. No worries at all. But yeah, the YouTube channel, Pixelogic's YouTube channel has a lot of really cool info. Another thing that I wanted to say about the standard brush, the one I'm using right now. It's at first, like, it's like the first brush you start using when you start with ZBrush. For me, like, the standard brush is like Ryu in Street Fighter. It's like the main character, so that's probably the first one you pick up, and then you start playing around with it, and you like it, but then you're like, this is quite limited. I want to try some other stuff, and then you try the other characters or the other brushes, and then you start learning new stuff, and then some brushes have completely different effects than the standard brush, and you're like, whoa, how does this work? But then there's a point when you come back to the standard brush and like rediscover how powerful it is, and because it's like really well built, it's really balanced, and you can do many things with that, like even in the standard, like the original standard brush, without changing anything. So that's why, like, in a way, it's like Ryu from Street Fighter, and then you can like, okay, rediscover the character and relearn how to play it with that basic character design or fighting design. I don't know. It's like a really dumb analogy, but I think it works, um, to try and understand why some stuff inside ZBrush never really changes. Because if it's really not broken, just leave it like that. I find it, and I think that's one of the reasons why so many people like to sculpt in ZBrush. It offers a lot of freedom that it's hard to find in other places, I think. Yeah, the standard brush is amazing for clothes. That's true. But I try to use it for creatures as well, as much as I can. And sometimes it's really useful. Um, there will be a time when you just like don't think. Like your hands will automatically choose the hotkey for whatever brush you need at the moment, without you thinking. And freestyle sculpting is one of my favorite things to do. Like just I don't use many brushes. I have them mapped on the numbers from like 1 to 8. So and like probably use like 3 or 4 much more than the other ones. And I think everybody who sculpts in ZBrush uses the same brushes as much. I'm just going around the guy and looking at it from different angles, making sure that everything's readable. Like figure, for example, I can just use the standard to accentuate those folds. So yeah, I'm almost done with the sculpting. I feel like I need to work more on the fingers. It was just like I was lazy today to do that, but I need to work on the fingers. I need to work on the feet. Maybe add a bit more definition around the knees and the back of the leg. This looks wacky as shit. I need to correct some of that, and I think I'm done with the sculpt, and I can just concentrate on the poly painting and the posing and the whatever. Because I apologize. Like I don't know if you guys knew about me before or not, but I took a several month break. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but it was quite a few months. And before taking the break, I was working on this guy. So if you want to see those videos, they're on the YouTube channel. If you go to playlist, there's a playlist of my streams, and you can check them out. I'm sorry that I'm not showing as much sculpting process as now as before. But it's like it's a natural process. It's a natural step of the process. Like sometimes you stop sculpting and then you start painting and then you start posing, and then there's this point where you don't sculpting and then you're just like compositing in Photoshop or like tweaking the lighting and things like that. It's part of the process of creating an image. So yeah, that's it. I wanted to thank you guys because I was like really nervous coming back, and I was nervous of something going wrong, the chat not working, or you know, whatever can go wrong always goes wrong. So I'm glad nothing did. I still yet don't know when I'll be streaming again. This was the only slot we could fit in for this month, but I'll be coming back next month for sure. And I'm probably gonna be streaming again on instead of I was streaming on Tuesdays. I'm gonna be streaming probably on weekends because I'm like my plate's pretty full right now during the week. Okay, let me read the comments. Hold on. Yeah, Tatafai, I took a break. Like I think it was like 4 or 5 months. I don't remember. I'm working for Real Effects Montreal right now. I'm in Montreal, and I'm a modeler on the. Yeah, I'm a member of the modeling team on Real Effects. We're working right now in 2 movies. The trailer for the first one is Scooby-Doo. The trailer just released last Monday, and it's gonna play in theaters before Frozen 2. So that's pretty cool. A lot of people are gonna see that. And then we're working on another movie that I'm not sure if it's already announced or not. I think so. I think yeah, I think so. It's called Rumble, and but I can't say a lot of that about that. And it's really fun. And oh yeah, the Scooby trailer. It looks really nice. Um, Glad you like it, dude. And yeah, I'm a modeler there, and at that studio, um, like the position is not separated into like environment modelers and character modelers. It's like modeling everything. So I've done a bit of everything: props, environments, characters, um, vehicles, and buildings. And it's mostly Maya, but I also use ZBrush a lot. It's really cool, but it's really not glamorous stuff. Like production modeling, it's sometimes really tedious, really boring stuff. It's not like this, what I'm doing right now. It's sometimes just a lot of fixes, a lot of repetition and modular modeling. But it's really interesting as well. Like you learn a lot, and I think since I moved to Montreal, I learned a lot because at first I was on surfacing. I was at another studio doing surfacing, so I was doing textures and shading, and now I'm in modeling. And I think I'm really fortunate to have learned the pipeline for production for both of those departments. And so yeah, that's it. That's my job, and I hope to see you guys next month again. Like I said, this month was pretty full, so they could only fit me in on the weekend, but I think that works fine because, like I said, I'm taking French classes during the week, and then going to work out and planning other personal stuff, so I don't have as much time to stream weekly as before, but hopefully next year I can come back weekly. We'll see. We'll see about that. ¿Qué onda, Edwin? Saludos, man. Qué bueno que andas por acá. Muchas gracias. How big of a leap is to go from game development, modeling, sculpting, AVs to the film industry? It's really similar stuff. At least the sculpting part, it's exactly the same. You only have to, like, for video games, you do your high res thing, high res mesh, and then bake it into a low res. And in animation, feature animation, you only do the high res stuff. It's really similar. It mostly depends on the type of game, because like if it's a mobile game, the low poly is gonna be really different than if it's like a AAA studio. So the length of the size of the leap really depends on the specifics, but it's really similar stuff. Like if you've worked in games, you can work in feature animation or in VFX. And if you work in VFX or in animation, you can also work in games. It's just like maybe there's gonna be a couple of months of learning curve adjustment, but that's it. Like it's really, as a modeler, I mean, and or as a, because like the term character artist, I like the term because it involves modeling and also involves the texturing part. But as an asset artist, which is to say you create any type of asset, not just characters, but as an asset artist that creates like the modeling, the sculpting, the retopo, the UVs, the textures, is really similar. The tools we use are the same. The program is the same. It just depends on the project, but it's really, really similar. Yes, Tatafo, if you check, I think it's showing on stream. Yeah, at the bottom, where the title of the stream is, you can check my socials: ArtStation, Instagram, Twitch, and Facebook. It's just all the same tag. So if you wanna, you can contact me. The easier way to contact me for like personal stuff would be, I think, Instagram or Facebook. You can find me there. Facebook is my name, José Rosales, and Instagram is this handle, José Rosales Art. You can find me there. If it's for like business stuff, my email would be better, and you can find that on my socials. But I'm not gonna give it my email here because I'm pretty full right now. So, but like for personal stuff, just you can write to me, and I can like try and help you if you have questions or stuff like that. Okay, so I'm just gonna say one last time, I have to go because my stream is 2 hours, but and we're finished. But again, I wanted to thank you guys so much, because I was really nervous of coming back, of something going wrong, and I think it worked pretty well. Sorry that I couldn't show as much sculpting as before, but I'm gonna keep improving on the stream little by little. So thank you guys, and yeah, if you have any questions or whatever, just let me know. Reach out to me, and I'll be glad to yes, talk with you and help you if I can. All right, take care, guys. See you.